Hello and welcome to the Artforge Academy YouTube channel. My name is Jan Urschel and I'm a concept designer and art director working in the entertainment industry. Artforge Academy was nice enough to invite me again to talk to you today about cinematic lighting. So just to give you a little bit of an overview over what we're going to do. So we're going to first try to understand what cinematic lighting really is, what we usually understand under that name. We're going to look at some examples. We're going to learn how to observe, how to study and apply cinematic lighting to our work, whether that's still images, concept art, or animations. The rules are all the same. We're going to do a little bit of a hands-on demo, and then we're going to wrap things up. So first, let's think about what cinematic lighting really is and what it means. So, in a very literal sense, cinematic lighting is, it's the lighting technique that is used in cinema, in film. I think the origins come from like the typical kind of 3-point setup with like a key light and bounce light and so forth from like photography. But I think cinematic lighting is something that has evolved over the course of cinematic history for a very specific purpose. If we kind of look at what we kind of can find in terms of definitions of what cinematic lighting is, we will find a lot of kind of very similar points that are highlighted in terms of, let's say, it goes beyond the basic setup, of course. It creates a mood, it creates an atmosphere, it can help to create depth for the story. We can use shadow and light to evoke feelings and set a scene's tone and, help the narrative. We can also look a bit further. Cinematic lighting is a fundamental technique that is needed in every movie to create the visual mood, the atmosphere, like I said, and a sense of meaning. It has a very precise function in that it helps, for example, to direct the eye of the audience, to help the audience where to look. A lot of times scenes change very quickly. We only see a certain scene for a few seconds or even a fraction of a second, and the human eye, the human brain needs to understand what's going on, who's in the scene and what's happening in terms of the action. So cinematic lighting helps us to know where to look. Cinematic lighting also helps us in terms of the psychology and the background of the characters. Is he good? Is he bad? Right? We have different kind of size and amount of lights, the color, the harshness. Everything can be used to kind of match the actor's emotions and to help also the audience to understand what the character is going through or what we're supposed to feel. The lighting also helps to kind of understand, for the audience to understand what kind of genre of a film we're looking at, right? Is it a horror movie? Is it a family drama? Is it an action movie? Is it a film noir, right? So by using the elements of, again, light and shadow, contrasts, patterns, framing and composition and everything all goes together to help us understand kind of what's going on. And of course, one key element is also the readability. The lighting needs to kind of give the image a structure and to, again, help the audience understand what's going on. So in order to not only just talk to you, but to also give you some idea of what that really means and how different artists use these techniques to shape a very unique look or to make, again, the audience understand what's going on. We're going to look at a couple of examples of different movies from different eras. One thing to note is that, yes, cinematic lighting is not always the same. Different directors, different cinematographers, different genres, different eras during which movies have been made have a very different look, and that's still generally all considered cinematic lighting, even though it's made by completely different people during a completely different time in different parts of the world. A lot of this is also, on top of everything, driven by evolving technology and trends, and we will see that the camera technology, sensor sensitivity, has a big impact on actually how movies look in general. So next up, we're going to look at some examples. Luckily for us, looking for references and study material is easier than ever with the internet and all. One such fantastic resource is ShotDeck. Of course, there's many more, but for the sake of this short video, I want to kind of focus on this one because I think it's one of the best. So ShotDeck is a search tool that is used a lot by the movies and games industry to look for movie frames. And the power of it is that it not only has millions of screen grabs in high resolution, but also it has a great tagging system. So you can search for all sorts of stuff, technical details, names of people involved on screen, and then you can filter out and find stuff very quickly. So we want to, of course, look at some great cinematic frames. That's the best way to learn from the masters, right? And of course, we look at cinema. There's also like TV and commercial images in here, so we'll find a lot of different kind of stuff. I want to to go a little bit back in time and look for a classic movie like Citizen Kane. So this movie was done in 1941, like a very different time to today, almost going on to 100 years almost. Back then, of course, camera technology was still not as fantastic as it is today. Therefore, the lights on the set had to be cranked up a lot, which resulted in a lot of very high contrast images, and also kind of had an effect on the costuming and everything. A lot of like very strong contrasty clothes for readability's sake. Sensor sensitivity of the cameras was generally quite a bit lower. So in order for the camera to extract detail, there needed to be a lot hotter lights, a lot brighter lights, which resulted in, for example, shots like this. You have, again, very strong light in the character, but you also have very deep blacks. And again, it results in a very contrasty picture. And over time, let's jump to something probably a lot of people in the industry know very well, which is Blade Runner from 1982. We will see kind of which is often used as the peak of cinematic lighting. It still retains that very high contrast look. If you look at scenes like this one here, of course it's kind of on purpose, because it's kind of like a modern film noir, a modern detective story, a whodunit kind of thing. So it helps to emphasize that feeling of mystery and drama. But here we can kind of see still like similar lighting techniques, like very contrasty images. This was still very much pre-CGI, so everything is done optically. We can see these really great high contrasty images, and often this is kind of used as a benchmark for this kind of like future dystopian look, high contrast, great cinematic lighting, lots of backlighting, but very, very readable. If we kind of look at it from this like zoomed out way, like you can always kind of see what's going on, who's in the shot, and great like use of like different kind of color lights here. Then we can also look at something like a different, which is a love story, In the Mood for Love, Wong Kar-wai's movie from 2000. Also fantastic lighting, fantastic choice of framing and color. Here we can also often see how lighting is used and how color is used to emphasize the kind of state that the characters are in. Here are very good examples of this kind of top-down lighting to show, again, the characters' motivations and emphasize them. And also readability. Most of the shots in this movie are really, really great. Here you can really see kind of the character's face really pops out against, and his white shirt pops out against the rest of the scene. But we can still see the kind of silhouette of the character he's talking to. So this is still, I think, what people would generally consider as, oh, that's cinematic lighting, right? What has happened, however, in the last, I think, 2 decades is that as kind of the sensor technology and camera technology kind of evolved, we have seen a lot more very naturalistic lighting. A lot of movies kind of employ a technique where they only use the available light. I'm not 100% sure that is what happened with the Revenant, really, but it certainly was made to look that way, where you don't really feel like you have like a, well, typical kind of cinematic lighting setup with like rim lights and all sorts of stuff, but it feels very much like the sky itself, or whatever available light sources are in the scene, whether that's like I don't know, like a bonfire or like candles or whatever. They kind of drive the lighting, or that's actually all the lighting there is. Again, with very sensitive kind of sensors that are available in digital cameras these days, they can pick up a lot of kind of light that previously, like let's say during Citizen Kane days, the camera would have never picked up. Like a scene like this probably would have been just completely black on a camera from the 1940s. But now we can actually shoot scenes that are like driven by single light sources that are very far away, or even moonlight, which of course resulted in a trend of, I think very famously in an episode of Game of Thrones, where the scene was so dark that most people with their like poorly or non-calibrated TVs could not see anything on screen at all. It was just black. Of course, in cinemas it's better because most cinema screens are calibrated, but still, it's still a very much a challenge to like get a very readable image out of this, right? On the one hand, it's great because it gives more kind of ways to express the cinematographers or the director's intent with these kind of technologies. But of course, it kind of makes you think about, okay, what does cinematic lighting mean? Is it really all about readability, or is there more at play now? So these are a couple of examples which I think kind of illustrate like there are different ways to approach cinematic lighting, different looks, right? And I think at the end of the day, if we kind of remember what cinematic lighting is set out to do, which is kind of serve the readability, serve to direct the focus and where the audience should look, communicate the feelings, the mood and the emotions, right? We do realize that we have a wide variety of possibilities to use cinematic lighting and help us tell our own stories. Now we're getting into our little hands-on demo. So I'm going to demonstrate how I usually do lighting studies, or how you at home can do lighting studies as well to get better at cinematic lighting. So I've chosen to use a still frame that I'm going to try to replicate in Blender. I'm just going to choose Blender and 3D application because that's how I usually work. And of course, you can do this kind of study in Photoshop or any other kind of painting app and paint it straight up. You can do it in any other 3D app as well. It's just about noticing and analyzing and observing what's in the frame and how you can get a similar result. So I'm going to use a frame from the movie Blade Runner, just because big fan, you can see the poster behind me. And I'm also going to choose a scene that where we can really control the light as well, and control the scene more than, let's say, like a big open forest or anything. Here we can, with this scene I'm going to do, and we can really break down the elements that are in the room and then also analyze the lighting setup. So this is purely for the sake of this little demo. I'm going to use this scene, as I said. So I have downloaded the image, so I'm going to just show you a little bigger here. We have a table, we have a fairly small room, 2 chairs, we have a guy standing here and maybe like a little cupboard in the back, the fan, and then this wall here that's probably at a bit of an angle, and then we have this like really strong light shining in. You can't really tell if it's artificial or if it's supposed to be sunlight. The movie is really heavily graded and color corrected, so we will just use an artificial light for the sake of this exercise. So I have prepared this scene already in Blender, so you can see here I made this little room here. I just used any kind of figure I just had, and of course the table and the chairs don't look accurate, of course. It's just I have kind of placeholders here. The materials will not be correct as well because I really want to focus here on the lighting, so it's completely incomplete, but you can see kind of that at least I can control my lighting within this little scenery. This is what it looks like from the outside. Of course I don't need anything else. I've set up the camera exactly how, or more or less exactly how it is in the shot, so I can go in here and see the frame exactly. The good thing here is that I can see exactly the format. Often I can see the lens that was used as well. I can take this information and use that in Blender. So we can see here that my framing is 239:1, and I'm going to use a 35mm lens, and that kind of matches what's in the shot. So I have that image on my separate monitor, so I can emulate it, of course, while I do the work. You should do the same, and you can also pull it up because I'm only going to show it when I'm done here. So I approximated everything, the position and everything, so for the sake of this, because we're not going to get 100% correct, of course, but we were going to get as close as possible. Please do note that this is not a technical Blender tutorial on how to achieve this really. It's more about like getting the look, getting the lighting set up, right? So I'm not going to go over every single little setting or anything. So we have this now. When we take a look at the scene itself, let's have a look at the lighting. So there's a fair amount of diffuse lighting that comes in here. And then we have this really strong light that focuses our attention on this person here. The light's quite blown out. It's really high contrast scene. So we'll have to think about how to achieve that here. We have a couple of smaller lights. I mean, they don't really give anything. They don't really cast any light on other objects, but they are there to also guide our eye. Like this is secondary and tertiary kind of like focal points. So these like red lights that are really stand in strong contrast to the rest of the color here will of course also kind of give us little like points of focus that we see like, oh, what is this? What is this? I skipped those for now because it's really only about the big kind of lighting scenario here. So if we go into Blender, then I set up a couple of lights already. I'm going to use the render engine cycles because it's a bit more accurate. So at first there's really not much in there. I have here a light panel. And I have the world settings kind of. The world settings, meaning the light that comes from the environment, is really just kind of like similar to the color that we have in the shot, and it doesn't do much else. I don't have an HDR or anything. You can probably use one if you find an appropriate one. And then in order to get this really blown out light, I could use an area light and to get a bit of like the shadows going and everything here, but it doesn't really give me this blown out super strong kind of feeling. So I have used like a texture emission kind of setting here. If we kind of change the camera shortly, we can take a look how that looks like. So I have kind of like maybe like something that emulates the sun coming in here, shining through this gap, and then we have this white emitter here that kind of gives us this blown out look. I try to place it behind it so it doesn't block the area light. So we kind of have the basic thing, but what really is missing, of course, is the really dense kind of fog that we have in here. So I placed the entire room into like a box where I applied like a fog volume, and that gives us this like really nice atmosphere. You need to play around with the settings to get like somewhat close of the density of what is in the scene you're trying to copy. What we also notice is that a lot of the detail that is facing us is kind of gone now that we have this like strong backlighting. So we probably want to bring a little bit of that back with an area light that kind of faces into the room. So basically coming from the viewer position, that gives us back a little bit of detail in the table in front, kind of like we see it in that scene, and also gives some kind of definition in the geometry, so it makes it read better. But now, of course, we need the well, in this case, the key lighting, right? So that really highlights this figure, because we can't really make it out. Please do note the difference here in terms of that my person that I have has kind of like a white top, whereas the one in the scene from Blade Runner is kind of black. That will look slightly different. But anyway, I placed a spotlight kind of up here, and then you can really see how that kind of brings the entire scene to life. Sorry that it's a bit slow and a bit grainy, but my MacBook my really old MacBook can only do so much. So now you can see that we're getting pretty close to the scene. We have this like strong lighting here. We have this rim lighting that we're getting on the figure to really separate it from the background. We get this like soft shadow play on the table. Maybe here and there the lighting is a bit too strong, but I think overall we're kind of getting in the right direction of what we see in this scene from Blade Runner. That's the basic setup, I would say. You can of course finesse it even more. You can get it 100% exactly like it is in the scene from the movie. Of course the materials will play a big role, so you need to adjust the reflectivity, the roughness of the materials. The wall will have less of a reflectivity, probably the tabletop, and the leather of the chairs of course a lot more, and then you can dial in a lot of the kind of details that way. Of course, again, the material of what the person wears is going to be important, adjusting some of the kind of highlights there. And of course, we have to keep in mind that the geometry I built is not based on any kind of blueprints or whatever. It's just kind of what I see and what I think it could be, right? So there will be slight misalignments. But I think overall, the scene is pretty okay, right? So we have, again, like this big light emitter here that gives us this white blown out look. We have the area light that kind of gives us this general diffuse kind of setup. of the light coming in through this gap here. We have the one that is kind of coming out of the camera that gives us the additional detail here in the table, and then we have the strong spotlight that kind of highlights the person. You can still add like God rays if you want in Photoshop, or you can fiddle around with the fog settings to get this exact result here in Blender as well, or whatever 3D package you use. Okay, that's it for the hands-on demo. Let's wrap this up. So to wrap things up, what we have to keep in mind, what our key takeaways are from cinematic lighting, is that we want to make a readable image. We want to make sure that we can direct the focus and direct the eye of the audience to exactly where they should be looking first and second and third. We want to think about what kind of feelings, emotions and atmosphere and mood we want to communicate with the kind of lighting we use. And of course we can also think about what kind of themes, what kind of general genre we want to kind of hint at that we're kind of using in our image or animations. So if you keep that in mind, I think we can create some really cool images, and I really urge you to kind of practice and use this little demo I did as a way to practice at home as well. Whether it's 3D, whether it's 2D, doesn't matter, but it's really essential that we kind of keep on learning, keep on focusing on kind of learning from the rich kind of history of cinema and cinematic lighting that is already there. So thank you again for watching, and hope I see you again.